A 15-year-old girl vanishes on a summer day, a path she's walked dozens of times before becomes a corridor of nightmares. Her body is found just hours later, violated, stabbed, discarded, and then silence. Decades of it. But this is not where the story ends. This is where it begins. Glen Ellen, Illinois, a quiet suburban town just west of Chicago. July 21st, 1985. The kind of summer day that seems frozen in time. Cicadas buzz in the treetops. Lawn sprinklers hiss in rhythmic bursts. Children roam the sidewalks, free from the demands of school. There's a comfort in the ordinariness of it all, a kind of American innocence. But for one family, that illusion would shatter before the sun could set. Christy Wesselman was 15, a rising sophomore at Glenbard South High School. Blonde, athletic, bubbly. She was known for her smile, her volleyball skills, and a heart that beat a little faster when she talked about her dreams. That Sunday afternoon, she walked to the nearby Jewel-Osco grocery store on Butterfield Road. Just a short trip to buy a candy bar and a soda. Her mom expected her back within the hour, but she never came home. Act I, the disappearance. It was around 3:30 p.m. when Kristy stepped out of her family's home on Golden Hill Avenue. She was wearing a white tank top, blue shorts, and gym shoes. A simple outfit for a quick errand. The Jewel store was less than a mile away. Kristy had walked that route many times before. Down the sidewalk, across the street, past a field of wild grasses. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous. Or so everyone believed. When Kristy didn't return within the hour, her mother, Sandra Wesselman, felt a pang of concern. Maybe Kristy had stopped to chat with a friend. Maybe she got distracted. But as the sun dipped lower in the sky, and dinner time came and went, that concern turned to fear. By nightfall, Kristy's absence had become unbearable. Her family began to call neighbors, friends, anyone who might have seen her. At approximately 1:50 a.m., with no sign of Kristy and no word from anyone who had seen her, Sandra called the police. Officers from the DuPage County Sheriff's Office responded immediately. They knew the area well. They also knew Kristy's family. Glen Ellen was a close-knit community, the kind where everybody knew everybody. A missing teenage girl wasn't just a statistic here. It was personal. Deputies retraced Kristy's expected path to the store. The Jewel employees remembered her clearly. She had arrived sometime around 4 p.m., bought a candy bar and a soda, and left alone. There was nothing suspicious about her behavior. She didn't seem distressed or followed. She smiled at the cashier, but that smile would be the last anyone ever saw. In the early morning hours of July 22nd, a search team fanned out along the wooded areas between the store and Kristy's home. Flashlights pierced the darkness. Officers called her name. And then, in a secluded stretch of tall grass near a footpath commonly used by locals, they made the discovery no one wanted to make. Kristy's body was found partially clothed. Her shoes and socks were missing. Her white tank top was stained and torn. She had been sexually assaulted. 8 stab wounds pierced her chest and abdomen. A gin shoelace had been tightly wound around her neck. The scene was devastating. For the officers who discovered her. For her family, who clung to hope until the final word. For a town that would never be the same again. Christy Wesselman had walked a mile to the store. She never made it back. And her killer? He had vanished without a trace. The days turned to weeks. The community of Glen Ellen was drowning in sorrow and in fear. Christy Wesselman's murder wasn't just a tragedy. It was a rupture in the illusion of safety. Mothers clutched their children a little tighter. Teenagers canceled their weekend jogs. And the peaceful silence of Churchill Woods was replaced by suspicion, anxiety, and the ever-present whisper. Who could have done this? Police had a body. They had a crime scene. But they didn't have a killer. The autopsy confirmed the community's worst fears. Kristy had been sexually assaulted, strangled. The brutality of the crime sent shockwaves through law enforcement and the public alike. But the scene told investigators almost nothing. There were no clear fingerprints, no signs of a struggle, no weapon, no witness. Just a bright summer day turned into a haunting silence. The FBI joined in. State police were called. This wasn't just any case. This was the murder of a young, promising girl right in the heart of suburban Illinois. Investigators launched a massive manhunt. They scoured the woods. They canvassed every house in the area. They questioned every known offender, every transient, every stranger who had been seen within a 10-mile radius of the park. They even brought in canine units. The scent trail led only a short distance, then vanished. Whoever had done this had either planned it or gotten incredibly lucky. Or maybe they knew the area, maybe they were one of them. A neighbor, a familiar face. The question gripped Glenn Ellen like a vice. Was the killer someone they all knew? A community on edge. Back at Glenbard West High School, Kristy's desk sat empty. The halls were quieter. Cheer practice stopped. Cross-country meets were canceled. Her teammates, her friends, her teachers were all thrust into a spiral of grief. The town held vigils. Candles lit up the night. Pictures of Kristy, smiling, young, alive, were taped to telephone poles and church doors. They weren't just mourning her. They were pleading with anyone who might know something, anything, to come forward. But the silence was deafening. Police followed hundreds of leads. They spoke with delivery drivers, joggers, and passersby who were in Churchill Woods that day. They even questioned the gas station clerk where Kristy was last seen buying a Coke. He remembered her. Friendly, laughing, alone. But he didn't remember anyone suspicious. No strange men. No strange cars. Just a normal Saturday afternoon. Just like any other until it wasn't. A sketch, a dead end. A few days later, a woman came forward. She believed she had seen a man near the area at the time of the murder. He was white, mid-20s, muscular, curly hair. He wore jeans, no shirt, and had a bandana tied around his forehead. It wasn't much, but it was something. Police had a sketch drawn up. It was circulated through newspapers, posted on bulletin boards, featured on the evening news. The community held its breath. But no one recognized the man. No neighbors, no co-workers, no one from the local gym, no one from the school. It was a face that belonged to no one. And soon, like the summer heat, the trail began to fade. A town trapped in memory. As weeks turned into months, the investigation slowed. Not because the police gave up, because the leads dried up. Every suspect was cleared. Every tip led nowhere. The sketch was eventually taken down. The flowers at Kristy's memorial wilted. The media moved on. But Glenn Ellen never did. Especially not the Wesselman family. Every day was a struggle. Every night, a torment. Kristy's mother clung to the last things her daughter ever touched. Her bedroom was preserved, untouched. Her clothes still folded. Her notes still pinned on the wall. They wanted answers. But more than anything, they wanted justice. And they weren't going to let Kristy become just another unsolved file. The DNA revolution. By the early 1990s, DNA technology was advancing, but slowly. The concept of using biological evidence to catch criminals was still new, still fragile, and for years inconclusive. But investigators preserved the evidence from Kristy's body, meticulously, hoping, praying, that one day the science would catch up. In 2000, the case was re-examined. Samples were tested again, more refined, more precise. This time they got a DNA profile. It was a full genetic fingerprint of Christy Wesselman's killer. It didn't match anyone in the system, not in Illinois, not in the FBI database, but it meant something important. If they ever found a man who did it, they'd know. Immediately. It was a waiting game now. A painful, haunting wait. Never forget. Over the next decade, Glenn Ellen changed. New families moved in. New students filled the halls of Glenbard West. But one thing didn't change. The memory of Christy Wesselman. Her story became local legend. Parents told their children to be careful in the woods. Coaches reminded athletes to run in pairs. And every few years, the case would resurface, covered again by local reporters, hoping to shake something loose. But the killer remained a ghost. Some believed he had left the state. Others feared he still lived nearby. Quiet, hidden, watching. Then in 2015, the silence shattered. 34 years. That's how long it had been since Christy Wesselman was murdered. An entire lifetime. For some, long enough to forget. But for Kristy's family, for her mother, her brother, her friends, it was a wound that never closed. Until 2015, a name from the past. On July 1st, 2015, the DuPage County Sheriff's Office made a quiet, calculated move. They arrested a man, not for murder, but for an unrelated crime, a burglary. His name? Michael D. Jones, a 62-year-old man. Average, forgettable. He lived just across the border, in Carbondale, Illinois, far from Glen Ellen. A face that had long disappeared from local memory. But when he was processed at the county jail, deputies did something they were now required to do for all felony arrests. They took his DNA. They submitted it to CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System. Just another sample in a sea of millions. But then the match hit. Michael D. Jones. The DNA profile taken from his cheek matched the one collected from Christy Wesselman's body 3 decades earlier. The reveal of a monster. Michael D. Jones had been hiding in plain sight. He wasn't a drifter. He wasn't a stranger. He had lived in Glen Ellen. In the 1980s, he had even worked at a local grocery store at the time of Kristy's murder. A local, a neighbor, a face that blended in. But Jones had a past, a dark, violent past. In fact, just 1 year before Kristy was murdered, he had been convicted of sexual assault. He had attacked a 16-year-old girl in Wheaton, not far from Glen Ellen. The pattern was clear. And yet, back then, no one connected the dots. He was sentenced to just 6 years. He served 3. He was free by the summer of 1985. Free. When Kristy went out for a run, the confession. Once confronted with the DNA evidence, Jones didn't deny it. He didn't claim innocence. He didn't beg. He confessed. He told detectives that he had seen Kristy jogging alone that day. He said he approached her, claiming to be hurt. He used her kindness against her. When she stopped to help, he attacked. He dragged her off the trail and into the woods. He raped her. And when she tried to fight back, he strangled her. Then he left her there, in the dirt, in the woods, alone. He went home, washed up, and lived the next 30 years like nothing had happened. The arrest and charges. In November of 2015, Michael D. Jones was officially charged with first-degree murder and sexual assault in connection with the 1985 killing of Christy Wesselman. The news broke like wildfire. The quiet man from Carbondale who had once worked a checkout lane was now revealed to be a cold-blooded killer. Kristy's mother, who had waited 3 decades for answers, finally got a name, a face, a person to hold accountable. And justice, at last, seemed within reach. The courtroom. In February 2016, Michael D. Jones stood before a judge, gray-haired, frail, but still capable of cruelty. He entered a guilty plea. No trial, no jury, just a quiet admission of guilt and a mother's long, anguished stare from the gallery. Guilty, he said, and with that word, spoken just once, 30 years of silence cracked. Narrator, emotional, slow. Kristy's mother, Marian Wesselman, was there. She stared at the man who had stolen her daughter, her future, her joy. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just spoke Kristy's name. One last time. The sentencing. Michael D. Jones was sentenced to 80 years in prison. He was 63 years old at the time. He will die behind bars. No parole. No redemption. No second chances. Just a cold cell. And the memory of the life he took. A family's final piece. After the sentencing, Marianne Wesselman spoke to reporters. Her voice was steady. Her grief, eternal. But there was closure now. A name. A confession. A face for the nightmare. We finally know who did this, she said. But it doesn't bring Kristy back. Still, justice had arrived. Late, yes, but real. And for a family that had lived through darkness, it was enough to breathe again. The power of DNA. The case of Christy Wesselman is more than just a story of loss. It's a story about what happens when science, persistence, and the refusal to forget come together. If not for that one burglary in 2015, if not for the DNA sample, Michael D. Jones might have died a free man. He might have taken the secret to his grave, but he didn't. Because Kristy wasn't forgotten. Because justice doesn't expire. And because sometimes the truth doesn't die. Christy Wesselman was only 15 years old when her life was stolen. She never got to finish high school, never went to college, never had a first job, a first love, a chance to grow old. Everything she was, her laugh, her voice, her dreams, was frozen in time on that summer afternoon in 1985. Her friends remember her as kind, funny, driven. Her mother remembers a girl who loved music and art, who had so much potential, who was just starting to find her place in the world. But she never got the chance. And for 3 long decades, her name echoed in silence. A case gone cold, a family left shattered, the unseen wounds. The murder of a child is like an earthquake. It splits lives open, quietly, violently, and the aftershocks never truly end. Kristy's brother carried the guilt of not walking with her that day. Her mother carried the weight of 100 what-ifs. Her friends grew older while she stayed 15. Forever. And the town of Glen Ellen, they never forgot. Not really. Behind every tree in Churchill Woods, behind every summer breeze, there was a memory. There was Kristy, the monster among them. Michael D. Jones faded into the background after 1985, moved south, got older, lived a life. He wasn't a famous killer. He didn't leave a string of victims. Just one. But that one life, that one brutal act, it left a trail of decades-long devastation. And he would have gotten away with it if not for a routine burglary arrest, a DNA swab, a system finally working the way it should. He had thought time would protect him, that no one would remember. But he was wrong. A name cleared. For years, people in Glen Ellen whispered, was it someone from the school? Was it a stranger? Was it someone close? Rumors swirled. Suspicions destroyed friendships. The cloud of accusation hung heavy over innocent lives. But when Michael Jones confessed, that cloud lifted. The town finally had a name. They could stop wondering, stop doubting. They could finally start healing. The power of modern justice. The Christy Wesselman case is a landmark of modern forensics. Without DNA, without Cody's, without the quiet perseverance of investigators who never closed the file, there would have been no justice. This wasn't a lucky break. It was the result of a system slowly catching up, of laws that finally said, every voice matters, even if it's silent. Every state that requires DNA collection upon arrest, every cold case unit that keeps digging, every lab technician, every detective who refuses to give up, they made this possible. Marianne's promise. After the sentencing, Marianne Wesselman spoke not just for herself, but for every parent who's lost a child to violence. She became an advocate, a voice in the silence, a reminder that justice can be delayed, but it must never be denied. She fought for stronger laws, for DNA databases, for more support for victims' families. Her message was clear. You never stop loving them. You never stop fighting for them. And you never let them be forgotten. Remembering Kristy. Today, there are memorials for Christy Wesselman. Plaques, trees, tributes. But the truest memorial? It's the stories her mother tells. The way her friends still speak her name. The way Glen Ellen still remembers that little girl who went for a run and never came home. In every cold case solved, in every family that finds closure after years of silence, Kristy lives on. Closure, but not an end. Michael D. Jones is gone. He died in prison in 2021. He left behind no legacy, no sympathy, no forgiveness. But Christy Wesselman, she left behind a movement, a determination to bring justice, no matter how long it takes. Because her story isn't just about tragedy. It's about resilience. It's about a mother who never gave up, a community that never stopped asking questions, and a system that slowly, painfully found its voice. Final words. Kristy went out for a run on July 21st, 1985. She never came back, but she was never truly gone. Not in the hearts of those who loved her, not in the memory of Glen Ellen, and not in the justice that finally found her name. So here's to Christy Wesselman, a daughter, a sister, a friend, and now, at last, a name no longer lost to silence. Another case closed, but not forgotten, because behind every cold case is a real person. A life stolen, a family haunted, a name worth remembering. Christy Wesselman's story reminds us that justice might sleep, but it never dies. Not as long as someone is still asking questions, still fighting, still listening. If this story moved you, don't scroll past it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you never miss another unsolved case we drag back into the light. This isn't just true crime. It's truth that demands to be heard. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, some killers hide in the shadows, but we don't stop until the truth steps into the light. This is Unsolved Crime Stories, where every silence has a voice.